Well, thank you first for inviting me, Larry, and for all of you for attending. I've presented at lots of different support groups, and I have to say that the reputation for multiple myeloma certainly stands strong with large numbers of people attending support groups. So it's really encouraging, certainly for me to see and for us as practitioners to see people who are really so engaged in your own health and well-being, and you wouldn't be here if you weren't. So that's really what we stand for at InspireHealth and what we help to support with. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that today. So what I'd like to do is talk a bit about taking charge of your own health, and with that, what InspireHealth does to support you in those pieces. So Larry, certainly the way that he said that the Cancer Agency focuses on treatment and certainly some supportive pieces. We sort of call ourselves the little sister of the Cancer Agency, in the sense of they're focused on treatment, we're focused on support. And I'll talk specifically about what those pieces are as we go through. My background as a clinician, I'm trained as a kinesiologist or exercise therapist is another word for that. I'm also a yoga teacher at the center. I'm an acupuncturist. And I'm the clinical director there as well. So we wear lots of different hats at the center. We're a small but mighty team, so we have our hands in lots of different pieces. So I want to give you a bit of an introduction to InspireHealth, a bit about our philosophy, who we are and what we do, and then looking at engaging in self-care and healthy choices. So first of all, why do we want to do that? And then how? And with the how, certainly speaking to the offerings that we have at InspireHealth, both in person as well as online. So a little bit of background about InspireHealth. We were founded in Vancouver in 1997 by two medical doctors who really felt that there was room for added support services for people with a diagnosis of cancer. And while our services have shifted quite a bit since we opened in 1997, the philosophy really stays the same, which is that we're here to support anyone with a current or past diagnosis of cancer. We are a nonprofit charity, so I do have experience in organizing fundraising events. That's a lot of what we do as well. We are partially funded through the BC Ministry of Health, and that's about 60% of our funding. The rest is all through things like our Rain Walk fundraising event, through grants, and through connections and donations within the community. We have our largest center in Vancouver. We also have our center in Victoria, of course, which opened in 2011. We have a center in Kelowna in the Okanagan that opened in 2012. And then we have a growing online center as well. So people who may not live in one of those cities where we have one of our physical centers, they're able to access a large number of our services online by video conference or by telephone as well. So we try to keep things as accessible to everyone. So what do? We focus on two main pillars. The first is self-management. So that's helping people who have a diagnosis of cancer, whether it's current, that you're undergoing treatment, or whether you've had treatment in the past. Our services are open to anyone who's had a diagnosis of cancer throughout their lives, as well as your loved ones, so friends and family members, helping you really to play an active role in your own care. So that idea of BC Cancer being primarily focused on treatment, we don't always have control over treatment. We certainly have treatment choices and options, but sometimes things can feel a little bit outside of our control. And so what we really focus on are those lifestyle pieces, those pieces that we do have control over. Things like what we're eating, things like the activity that we're engaging in, looking at stress reduction and stress management. So all of these pieces that really can play an important role in overall quality of life and well-being. And so that second pillar there being quality of life. So all of our programs and services really are evidence-based, and they're here to support overall quality of life and well-being. So with that idea, it means that we don't have a cookie cutter approach to care, and that every person and every treatment, every exercise program, every nutrition plan is really individualized for each person, depending on what's going on for you, where you're at, and what your goals are. So who's eligible to participate in programs at InspireHealth? Anyone who has a current or past diagnosis of cancer. So as an example, we have people who had a diagnosis as a child or as a teenager who are engaging in our services now in order to help to promote lifelong health, to help to prevent recurrence later on. So anyone who's had a diagnosis at any point, who's 16 or over, has a personal health care number. Of course, family and supports are encouraged to participate, and people can attend our programs at any point through treatment. So it's not saying that it's only during treatment or it's only after, or there's even an expiry date to when you're sort of moved on your own way. So you can attend our programs forever, really, is what it comes down to. So a little bit more about our philosophy. The first piece that we want to look at is what we would call a standard cancer-based model. And so what we have here is, there we go. So the gray circle there being the cancer cells that are present in the body, and 3 primary methods of treatment. We recognize there are other methods of treatment, but these are the most common that we see. So chemotherapy, radiation, and surgery, all pointing towards those cancer cells in the body. So very targeted treatments, and very focused on decreasing or eliminating those cancer cells from the body. We also have perhaps more of what we would call an expert-based model between a physician and a patient, so a bit more prescriptive in nature. What we try to do is work alongside that standard-based model of care and introduce more aspects to what we would call a supportive cancer care model. And while this model is focused on cancer, it's also really important to remember that there's research out there to support all of these different aspects of health and well-being for any other type of chronic disease. So you could take out cancer here and you could put in heart disease, or you could put in depression, or you could put in osteoporosis. But all of these different practices here are going to be supportive of overall health and well-being regardless of what the diagnosis is. So we still have standard treatment, chemotherapy, radiation, and surgery, and the cancer cells that are there in the body. What we're trying to do is focus on the fact that those cancer cells are within a whole person, and that there are lots of other aspects that can contribute to health and well-being. And so while these treatments are focused very strongly on the cancer cells that are there, there's lots that you can do to support your overall health and well-being. So there are a few examples up here. It doesn't always mean that you need to focus on all of these different pieces. Sometimes it can be a bit overwhelming, but looking at different pieces around the self-care pie, so to speak. So we have things like stress reduction or stress management, things like mind-body practices, whole foods nutrition, making sure you're getting good activity that's appropriate for what's going on for you, good sleep and rest, and then emotional and spiritual support as well. So all of those aspects contributing to overall health and well-being of the whole person. We also have here a little bit of a different model in terms of collaboration between healthcare practitioners. So we really want to work together to best support each person. And we also want to be providing you with the information that you need to make decisions and healthcare choices in a supported way. So we're not there to be prescriptive or telling you what you should or need to be doing, but we're really there to support your decision-making process, whatever that might be, and give you the information that you need, help you with research if that's what you need, so that you can feel informed in your healthcare choices. Any questions?
That's good.
I'll leave room for questions at the end, but please, if you have questions as we go through, I'm happy to answer them as we go. So the first piece, sort of setting the stage there for looking at lifestyle factors. This was a study that was done with about 3,000 cancer survivors in the US, and they were looking at overall lifestyle statistics for people who had been diagnosed with cancer. I usually just focus on this bottom bolded line here, which says, in terms of smoking, diet, and exercise, only about 5% were meeting the minimum standards for those factors. And this is not a statistic to make people think about what they're doing and start to feel guilty about what maybe they're doing or they're not. It's really just meant to sort of plant that seed of maybe there's something that I could do that could help to improve my overall health and well-being. Maybe there's an area that I could start to focus on. And one thing that's really important as well to know is that if we looked at the entire North American population, these numbers would be no different. So while this is a cancer-based population, if we took the entire North American adult population, these numbers wouldn't be any different. So it's not meant to say that this has anything to do with your diagnosis. It's again just planting that seed of what could I do that could help to improve my overall well-being. I know there's things I could do.
Yeah, me too.
So thinking about our clinical services at InspireHealth, we have 5 main types of clinicians as part of our team. And as we go through these different slides, I'll talk about how each of these different types of clinicians would be involved. The first would be our medical doctor, so Dr. Lori McFarlane, as was mentioned before. She comes down 2 days a week from Denman Island and is a general practitioner or a family doc by training, but has chosen to specialize more in this area of supportive care. So I have a slide going through more what she would talk through with you in a consultation, so we'll save that for a moment. Clinical counselors, so we have master's level clinical counselors. We have at the Victoria site both master's level kinesiologists or exercise therapists, and then we also have a collaborative nutrition team between registered dietitians and holistic nutritionists. So we have, as really the foundation or the pillar to our programs, is InspireHealth's Life program. And what I will do is just pass around this handout here. I have a couple handouts for you. So you can grab one and just pass it around. This is a handout related to our Life program. So it gives you an idea of what the program entails. It's a sample schedule and it has all the dates up at the top for the 2-day program. And really, this is a program that has been developed and modified and changed over the 20 years that InspireHealth has been open. So we're constantly making upgrades and modifications, and the idea is that this is really a solid introduction into supportive care. It's an opportunity to meet all of our clinicians, and it's an opportunity to participate in a community-based workshop. So what's so nice about the program is that across the 2 days we really start to see relationships being formed, and people by the end are taking down each other's phone numbers and emails, and there is that community that's really built on top of learning more about these different areas. So the schedule that's going around is rough. It changes sometimes month to month, but it gives you a really good indication as to what's offered. And for those of you who don't have it yet in front of you, these are really the main pieces. So we're looking at whole foods nutrition, we're looking at activity and exercise, stress reduction and management, we're looking at healthy communication, there are support groups, taking charge of your health, mind-body connection, lots of different pieces that all can be really, really important along that cancer journey. I think there's a few people in here who have attended the Life program before. I know Lauren has, yeah, and Carrie. So getting started with InspireHealth, one of the pieces when we talk about that patient-centered care, or patient empowerment is another way to sort of put that, is that you choose how you want to engage in our programs and services. And I think what I'll do is just pass around this handout, which is a copy of our schedule. So that gives you an idea of what are the different day-to-day, week-to-week programs that we offer at InspireHealth. So you really choose where to start. Sometimes people come in and they say, I really want to meet with the doctor because I have questions about this type of treatment that I'm on. Or other people come in and they say, I really am focused on nutrition. I want to meet with a dietitian. And so some people have a really clear idea, other people not as clear, and that's fine. And you just sort of pick and choose how you want to go through the different programs, or how much or how little you want to engage in. We ask that you pre-book classes and consultations and things like that. Of course, we do have space limitations, but all of these things are very easy to do. But really that idea of you choosing where to start, I think, is the most important piece here. So that's a bit about InspireHealth. Now, if you start to break it down into some of the different pieces of our programs, it's important to look at not only why is it important to engage in elements of self-care, like good exercise, like making sure we're sleeping well, or getting good nutrition. And then, so we have the why, but then it's also the how. How do we put this into practice? What are some things to start to think of? And what I want to do is to go through each of these, the how in a bit more detail than the why, because I think a lot of you know some of the main points of the why. But in terms of how, looking at our programs and services and how those can be supportive, and also just planting a few seeds and ideas, mostly in the areas of exercise, nutrition, and stress management. So there's lots of research, and there's more and more research coming out, which is really exciting, of course, which is supportive of lifestyle factors like stress management, like activity, like whole foods, nutrition, and having positive support network, or that emotional support. And while there are pieces of this research which can show that we may have better outcomes in certain areas, or may help to improve quality of life in certain areas, what we know as a general consensus from all of that research that's out there is that at the very least, engaging in these practices can substantially improve quality of life. And at best, like I said, not all studies are showing this, but certainly we're seeing more and more moving in this direction, but this is hard research to do. And at best, engaging in these practices may really optimize cancer recovery and overall survival. So we know that these are good things to engage in. The question is how. This is a great quote. This is from an oncology textbook. So one of the primary textbooks that's used in medical school for training oncologists. And it says, all the studies summarized previously suggest that inflammation is closely linked to cancer. These studies indicated that an anti-inflammatory lifestyle, which are these things that I'm going to talk about, could play an important role in both the prevention and treatment of cancer. So the fact that we're starting to see some of this come into medical texts is really exciting, because it's starting to pave that way of there are more things that we can do, that we have control over, that can possibly affect our outcomes. So the first is exercise. I'm biased, of course, this is my area, but exercise is also the area where there is the most evidence to support the relationship between outcomes and overall quality of life as well, for a number of different reasons, and engaging in regular activity. So while I'm biased as an exercise therapist, there really is the most research out there to support this area. And part of that is because it's really hard to do good nutrition research if we're looking at nutrition versus exercise, but there's a lot to support the exercise piece.
Huh.
So we have some people talking to their doctor and saying, yeah, but seriously, what can we do to improve our health? And the doctor just saying, exercise, exercise, exercise. And it's true. Exercise really has been linked to the improvement in so many symptoms, a number of chronic conditions as well. And what so many doctors say is that if you could take all of the benefits of exercise and put them into a pill, which of course you can't do, and I wouldn't have a job if you could, that everyone would be prescribed this pill, right? We just know that the benefits are vast, and I won't go through all of them today, but the idea of so many physical benefits, emotional, psychosocial benefits, and then quality of life, helping with treatment side effects, and overall lifespan and survival. So those are some pretty good reasons to exercise, I think. One of the most important pieces that we talk about, especially with a diagnosis of cancer, is exercise being a huge supporter to the immune system. And one piece that I think is really, really important to emphasize is that more exercise is not always better. More intense exercise is not always better. And sometimes we have that idea, or we have been told that maybe, and it's not always the case. And so this is a little diagram that we like to show that really highlights the importance of engaging in regular exercise and also moderate intensity exercise. And so what we can see here is our immune function, the line in blue, when we're inactive. So everyone is different. Everyone has a certain baseline for how their immune system functions, right, when you're at rest. As you start to increase not only the frequency of activity, but also the intensity of activity. So if we think of walking as an example, we can go from sitting to going for a really light stroll where you could sing a nice song, to walking with some intention and feeling like you're working a little bit, to huffing and puffing up a hill, right? We've got sort of that whole spectrum there. So here we've gotten up out of the chair and we're starting to stroll a bit. And then we're walking a bit more with intention. We're feeling like our breathing's increasing, our heart rate's increasing. And that's about where this moderate intensity is. Does anyone know what a good indicator of moderate intensity is?
Can't talk? Can't talk?
We want to be able to talk.
Okay.
So can't talk is maybe a little more down in here.
Okay.
Yeah, but something to do with talking.
Carry on a regular conversation would probably be right at the top.
Yeah, exactly. So if we think of being able to sing, and I always say no one would want me to sing, but if you tried to sing, this is where your intensity is going to start to come up. That moderate intensity is that you can carry on a conversation. It might not be as easy as how we would converse if we were sitting or how I'm speaking right now. I may need to take a few extra breaths, but I can still easily converse. As the intensity starts to rise, this is where we are having to take far more breaths in between words, to the point where in this high intensity, or what we call overtrained, high intensity is going to be that we're huffing and puffing and gasping for breath, and on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 is you're running from a grizzly bear kind of thing, right? The most intense that you could do. So it's that moderate intensity where we're going to see the greatest immune benefit. And that's, if we're looking at the inverse, that red line, that's low-grade inflammation in the body, and that's also susceptibility to illness or infection. So your immune system, when it's functioning the most optimally, your susceptibility to infection is going to be lower. Does anyone have examples of moderate intensity activity? I gave one, brisk walking. Swimming, yeah.
Gardening?
Gardening, lots of gardening happening right now.
Cycling.
Yep,
Yeah.
cycling.
Vacuum cleaning.
Vacuuming, yeah. Yeah, boo on the vacuuming, but yes, definitely. And that's an important piece too when we're looking at activity, is to say sometimes there are things that we're doing already. We may not consider vacuuming to fall under the category of exercise, but if we're working at that moderate intensity when we're vacuuming or gardening, that's counting towards our activity count, right? So we often will look at what we're already doing before we're looking at how much more can we add in and pile on top. So that immune system support is really the most important piece. And one thing that's important to recognize is that sometimes what gets us into that moderate intensity or what feels good for us in that day, that can vary. And that can vary from maybe before your diagnosis to where you're at right now. It can vary from last week to where you're at right now, or even yesterday. So we really encourage people to take an every day is a new day approach, recognizing where your body's at each day, not pushing yourself to that point of, feeling exhausted and fatigued from the activity that you're doing, but recognizing that that need for modification needs to be there, and that openness and flexibility as well. So that's something that certainly as exercise therapists, we will help to work with you on in order to support that piece. How to get started. So first, exercise should be progressive. We want to start slow and gradually build up. This is so we're not shocking the body. And we would slowly build up the intensity as well, but start with a smaller duration, gradually build up. Exercise should be fun, right? So there's so many different activities that are out there. It's really important to figure out what you enjoy doing. Right? Some people like being outside, other people prefer to be inside, some people like to be alone, some people like classes, some people like music, some people don't. There's tons of options, right? And so the likelihood of you doing something that you don't really like doing is pretty low. Maybe you'll do it once or twice, but sustaining it is not very predictable. Make it social. Some people like, again, being in a social group. Other people prefer not to be, but it's just important to figure out what works for you. Exercise should also be energizing, and I think this is a really important piece, that idea of not overdoing it. If you go out and you go for a walk, or you swim, or a cycle, or gardening, or vacuuming, and afterwards you feel like, whew, like I'm done for the day, that's probably an indicator that you did a little bit too much. Okay, yeah, I think most of us have been in that situation before. Sometimes we don't feel it that day, but we feel it the next day. So then we wake up the next morning and it's like, oh, I don't want to go anywhere today. I just want to stay in bed, right? And so it's about sort of figuring out for you how your body reacts to activity. Where can you gauge if it's a good amount or if you've done too much? But the general rule is that after you exercise, you should feel the same as you did before or better. If you're feeling worse, whether that's pain or fatigue or anything like that, usually an indicator it's a bit too much. So at InspireHealth, all of our exercise programs start with one-on-one consultations with an exercise therapist. So there that would be myself, or Emily is our other exercise therapist. These are about 75 to 90 minutes long for your initial, and then we have follow-ups that are available as needed. So in there we'll talk about your health history, we'll talk about treatment and your diagnosis as well, so understanding what's going on for you so that we can make safe recommendations. Safety is really for us the most important piece in prescribing exercise or giving exercises to you. We also have exercise classes. So we have our individualized class, and so in that class, everyone has seen us, everyone has a program that's been made specifically for them, for what their goals are, for what types of activities they like doing, and also to ensure good safety. So in our classes there, everyone has their program, they're going through their program on their own, but Emily or I are in there supervising. So we're making sure that you're doing everything safely, we're making adjustments as you need, and building the program as well as needed. We have group-based resistance classes, so strength-based classes that are more circuit style. So we have a level 1 class, which is an introduction to strength training, and that's on Friday afternoons. And then we also have a level 2 circuit class on Tuesday mornings. And so we would talk through sort of the differences between each of those and where to start in that one-on-one consultation. Also have 5 yoga classes at the center that we run each week. I facilitate one of those 5, but we have a wonderful team of volunteers primarily who support those programs. We have a walking group, and then we also have lots of online resources, videos and webinars in all of the different areas that you can look at through our website as well. So healthy eating, nutrition is another big pillar or component of what we do. And one piece that's really important is to remember all of the different things that our food provides. So that idea that we are made up of what we eat is really true. Our food gets broken down into lots of different components, which become building blocks in the body. So there's lots of reasons or ways that our food provides that. And it's also important to remember the impact that what we're eating can have on things like our mood, our energy, our ability to sleep. And so looking at what we're choosing to put into our bodies and what that outcome is going to be is really important. We really try as much as possible to subscribe to this idea of a whole foods approach. And what that means when we talk about a whole foods approach is that we always say if we wanted to, because the likelihood of us doing all of these things to actually get our food is quite low, probably living in an urban setting. But if we wanted to grow, raise, harvest, or hunt, could we do that? So for the food that we're eating. So an example, coffee, right? If I wanted to grow coffee and harvest it and roast it, I could-ish, right? For the most part, I could. If you wanted to have butter, right? Could you raise the cow, milk the cow, and go through the process of making butter? Yeah, we could, right? If you wanted to make Cheerios, could you grow Cheerios? Well, you could grow the wheat, but how does it get from the wheat to Cheerio box? I don't really know, right? There's quite a lot of processing steps that happen in order for that to get from ground to bowl. So this idea, if we can focus on these pieces of whole foods, then we're making sure that we're getting the nutrients the way that it's really intended to in nature. So I recognize I have not too much time left, so I'll go through this a little bit quicker. But we can look at this whole food spectrum, right? So at the one end of the spectrum, we have a local organic apple. Okay, so you can go to a tree out in Saanich and you can pick that and you can eat it. When you eat that, it's going to give you lots of enzymes, carbohydrates, tons of different nutrients. There's water in there. There's fiber in there. That's part of the carbohydrates. So there's lots in there. And it's really, that is a whole food, right? That's everything that you need. And everything that's in there is working together so that you're absorbing each of the pieces in that apple the best that you can. We move down the whole food spectrum a little bit more. So we've got that apple, but now we're going to juice it. So it goes through a juicer. We're taking out the fiber. It's going to lose some nutrients, partially through the heat process of juicing that apple. And then you've got apple juice. So still a pretty good food, right? And when I say food, I mean something that we're taking in. Still pretty good, still down towards that optimal end. But now we've got that sort of fiber apple. We're going to add a whole bunch of sugar. We're going to add high fructose corn syrup, bunch of chemicals. We're going to sort of bake it, add some flavorings, and now we have a breakfast bar with an apple filling. So the amount of the apple that ends up in that bar is pretty small, right? So when we're looking at the whole food to the processed food, we've come way down the spectrum. Does that make sense to everybody? Yeah. So when we're looking at healthful choices in nutrition, one of the really important pieces is to decrease the stress around healthy eating. So it can be very stressful to say, I'm trying to eat more of this and I'm cutting out this and I need to make sure that I have 12 grams of this and 100 milligrams of that. That's really stressful. So looking at more of a whole foods moderate approach can be a much easier way to look at obtaining nutrients. So we call it the 80-20 rule, good for the soul, good for the body. 80% of the time we're taking in food that we know is really supportive of our health. 20% of the time, it's where we have a little more leeway. That's where we're feeding our soul, right? We're having that extra piece of something or that glass of something else that feels good when you have it. But it's not something you maybe want to have every day. But having that moderate approach means that we're not feeling restricted any one way. Recognizing that we're all unique and we need to take recommendations and adapt them to you. So that's where meeting with Eva, who's our dietitian, can be really, really helpful in terms of looking at different pieces that we want to promote more of or maybe avoid some. Looking at a scale, so that spectrum, maybe that whole food spectrum, rather than saying this is a good food, this is a bad food, we can just look at something a little more, where does it lie on that spectrum versus yes and no. And then also thinking about context. So knowing that each person is going to have different unique needs. You're going to be in a different place in terms of treatment or how you're feeling, and it's important to adapt based on that as well. With nutrition services at InspireHealth, we have one-on-one consultations available with a dietitian. Again, these are 75 minutes long, and then follow-ups that are available as needed. So she'll look at your 7-day food record, which we ask people to fill out and bring with them. So everything you've had to eat or drink across the last 7 days. And it's not meant to be a guilty process or to bring it in. There's so many people who bring it in and say like, oh, I know it's not very good. And that it's not about judgment at all. It's just having an honest idea of what you're doing right now so that we can look at how can small shifts be made. We also have nutritional learning workshops and nutrition Q&As, so she'll have workshops, everything in nutrition on that schedule that got handed out is in green. So things like mindful eating, label reading, blood sugar balance, lots of different pieces, individual topics related to nutrition. And then online nutrition webinars and lots of recipes as well. So again, referring back to the website for all of those pieces. And then stress reduction or stress management. I like the term stress management a bit better, recognizing that we all have stress in our lives and we can try to reduce some of those stressors, but we can't always. Right? We can't all get rid of all of our stressors. So it's more about coping or management of those stressors rather than looking at forcing that stress maybe out of our lives. So it's really important to recognize that stress has a huge impact on our health, particularly on the immune system. And that's because our bodies are so good at prioritizing and multitasking. So if we're under chronic states of stress, our body says, okay, well, digesting food properly and our immune system functioning optimally, those types of things can go on the back burner because I need to be ready to deal with that stress, right? And so it's really important to recognize that when our bodies are under chronic states of stress, other things do take the back burner, and that includes our immune system. So looking at ways to relax, bringing our body more into what we call the parasympathetic nervous system control. So rest and digest, relax, and find ways to not only decrease stress, but just manage stress. If you're feeling really stressed, what works for you? For some people it might be to go and talk to a friend. For other people it might be to go for a walk. Again, relaxation practices and stress management techniques are very individual. So there's lots of different options through that schedule in terms of things that you can try out. We talk about mindfulness a lot, so practicing that idea of being mindful, and we often say, is the mind full? Is it busy? Or are we being mindful, right? And we have two options of what's going on around us. So is there a way to sort of slow down, take a deep breath, and be mindful rather than have full minds? There's lots of different tools that we can use for mindfulness. There's examples up there. So breathing, that's sounds pretty basic, but a really powerful practice in terms of taking 5 deep breaths, slowing down. The actual physiological impact of mindful breathing, taking even 5 deep breaths, is huge because it starts to shift the body from that sympathetic or that fight or flight mode into that parasympathetic or that rest and digest mode. When we look at the different things that the autonomic nervous system controls, things like heart rate and our pupils dilating and blood flow through the body, the only thing that we really have control over is our breathing. So we know that when we're stressed out, our breath becomes more shallow, it becomes more rapid. But if we take 5 deep breaths, it shifts ourselves into that relaxation mode. Focusing on your 5 senses, especially if you're out in nature. So recognizing what's around you, taking it in, being mindful, not full of mind. Meditation is another, prayer for some, counting, so even counting your breath, that idea of counting sheep. It's something to for the mind to focus on that's enough but not too much, right? That we start to get wrapped up in it, but it's just enough to keep us focused. Visualization or imagery, different sounds, so listening to a waterfall as an example, or listening to certain music that you enjoy. Mantra or repeating sayings to yourself can be quite calming as well. And yoga, tai chi, qigong, all of these more slow meditative practices. So one of the pieces that we have is online meditation. This is every Thursday night. And you can go on to InspireHealth.ca, and down towards the bottom there's a place to sign up. And you can put your email in, and then every Thursday you get a link to a website. And at 7 o'clock you go to that website, and it's a guided meditation. So it's a nice way to have that one sort of relaxation or that meditation piece of the week that you can do from your own home, which is really nice too. Looking at support services at InspireHealth, so we have counseling appointments that are available. These are one-on-one, and then initial appointments, usually 75 to 90 minutes long, and follow-ups as well. So Genevieve is our clinical counselor who mostly facilitates those. We have support groups. These are broken out into support groups for patients, support groups for support people, and then also young adult support groups as well. Meditation, both in center, so Monday morning. Anything that's in the schedule there that's in blue or red sort of fall under this category here. In center or online, as I just mentioned. Looking at different areas of self-care, so we have what we call our LEAP workshops, and these are 2-hour workshops that specialize or are focused on 4 different aspects of self-care, and each one is a different area. And so the 4 are mind, body, spirit, and passion. And they're very interactive. It's really about what each person brings to the room, and it's led, but it's a really nice interaction on these different topics. So highly recommend those. We have art therapy workshops as well, usually every 1 to 2 months. So we'll have some things on our next May-June schedule. And then we have acupuncture as well, which is offered for treatment-related side effects. It's not specific to chemotherapy, although I know it says it up there, but treatment-related side effects is really what we focus on for the acupuncture sessions. As I mentioned, Lori McFarlane is our medical doctor, and a lot of times people ask, well, I already have a lot of doctors. What would one more do for me? And so she's really here to act as a support in all of those different areas of health and well-being. And so she can focus on helping to discuss questions that might fall around decision making, around treatments, around work or lifestyle, looking at stress management. She can help answer questions around lifestyle factors. Particularly, she's quite knowledgeable in the areas of things like caffeine and alcohol that people do tend to ask a lot of questions about. A great resource for sleep. Sleep is so important. Our CEO, Janice Wright in Vancouver, calls sleep the crust of the healing pie, that you couldn't have that healing pie without it. And it's true, our body does so much resting and recovery, really, and healing, repair through that time of sleep. Questions around sexual health and cancer, body image, fertility, anything along these lines, and helping to find reliable information. So the one thing that's so great about Lori is that if she doesn't know, she's going to find out for you. And the other piece is that she's really well connected in the cancer community, particularly in Victoria, but across the island and province as well. So she's great at providing resources for people in certain areas, or sending you off to the right people. So she's really quite a wealth of information for most things. So the other piece that's just really lovely is that your initial consultation with the doctor is 90 minutes long. So there's not a lot of opportunity in our medical system to spend that much time with a doctor. And so that's one of the pieces that we think is really special and really important as well. And follow-ups, of course, available as needed. So just finishing up, talking a little bit more about our online programs, I really recommend people go on to our website, which is inspirehealth.ca. It's on that schedule that I handed out. There's lots of information there. We have recipes, we have tons of videos that have been recorded that are up there, so you can watch them in your own time from your own home. We have our research updates, which are quarterly research interpretations that are done in the areas of supportive cancer care. We have our newsletter. You can sign up for online meditation, tons of different things. You can learn how to register for our fundraising events as well. And then we have our supportive cancer care guide. So I brought one copy here. I'm happy to pass it around if you want. This looks at the different areas of InspireHealth and our programs and services in a lot more detail, of course, than what I would have covered today. There's lots of research there. There's some recipes in there as well. And that's a really great reference guide. And we sell those at the centers for $20. So for those of you who haven't been to InspireHealth before, we're above the TD Bank in Oak Bay. That's right in there is where people do yoga. Just where the Fairway Market is on Oak Bay Avenue in the village there. We're right upstairs from that. Couple little photos. So we have a library where people can take a look at some of the books and take them home if they want. Kitchen, this is where we offer our full range of cooking classes and nutrition programming. It's also really great for making lunch. This is our team, so we have Eva, who's our dietitian, Emily, an exercise therapist, Genevieve, our counselor, that's me, Lori McFarlane, our doctor, Jordan, our amazing admin support. That's Janice Wright, she's our CEO, and Amber Baker, who's our nutritionist and operational support. And Amber's little baby. So that's our InspireHealth team, and we hope to, of course, get to know all of you a little bit more. Again, no referrals required for our programs. We're open typically 9 to 5, Monday to Friday. We do have some evening and weekend programming, but not always consistently. And we have an information session that we run every Monday from 3 to 4. And every Friday at 11 a.m. So this is, well, really everything I talked about is in there. So if you're interested in participating in our programs, I do have some forms as well here that you're welcome to fill out, or you can come to one of these sessions or give us a call to sign up. And once we have you in our system, you can start scheduling things. I think I mentioned, although if I didn't, all of our programs are offered at no cost. So our programs are completely free of charge, and that's why we do fundraising, in order to support those programs being offered at no cost. It wasn't always that way. So we certainly appreciate all the support of our community in order to keep our programs free of charge. There you go.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
How much longer do you want to stay? We're close to 2 because I talked too much at the beginning, but,
Oh, I can stay. Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So should we open it up for 10 minutes or so before we have our snacks and fire away as usual?
Yeah.
In either this month's or last month's Atlantic monthly magazine, there's a non-technical explanation. That graph you showed of inflammation and exercise,
Yeah.
it talks about how inflammation is part parcel of, specifically it talks about cancer and heart disease.
Mm.
And it explains how we got that way through our 5 billion years of evolutionary history. And we have immune systems that are essentially paranoid, is the thesis behind it. It's non-technical, it's not long, it's easy to read, but it provides an evolutionary perspective, because inflammation of the arteries is certainly part parcel of heart disease, and inflammation is part and parcel of cancer as well. So I found it quite interesting.
Yeah, I'd love to.
Yeah,
Take
it's
a look.
just a short article, but it relates it to how we evolved. And we are, we didn't have antibiotics. We didn't, and so we didn't have vaccinations, and inflammation, disease, parasites, and that sort of thing getting into our body. We built a super strong immune system, essentially, that overreacts, and even a little bit of pollen from the pine tree in my backyard, my immune system goes nuts. So I recommend it to anybody.
Absolutely, and it's certainly interesting when you bring up that idea of evolution, and I think that's really, for each of those 3 main areas, we can look back to how we have evolved, and maybe as humans in not the best way, right? So if we think even 50 years ago, but back further to that, people were far more active. Not everyone had cars for transportation. People's jobs were far more active, and now we're spending time sitting at computers a whole lot more, right? We look at food, and before everyone could only hunt, harvest, gather, and grow. Now we have amazing technology, but that technology is creating this processing plant, really, to turn what we naturally have into something that's quicker, easier, and cheaper. So, yeah, be an interesting article to read.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I would think too that we're sort of hardwired for the way we lived 50,000 years ago.
Yeah.
And that's our legacy, it's in our DNA. So inflammation, in fact, may be something we're hardwired to have, but it's the excess of that. It's when we're out of balance, I think, that it creates these problems.
We didn't grow fangs, we didn't grow claws, and we would be just a little pink delicacy in the jungle at night. Unless you were carrying an AR-15.
It's not good.
Any other questions?
We live up island. Do you have a lot of resources? We're on Gabriola.
Yeah, so all of our consultations with any of our clinicians are available, of course, in person, but also over the phone or by video conference.
Okay.
So that's a really good option for the consultation piece. And then I would really recommend looking at our website for all of the resources that are there. We do some outreach programs, mostly on the island. We've gone to Salt Spring. That's the only Gulf island we've gone to. So we typically, about every 2 months, is usually Lori leading it. Sometimes Eva, our dietitian, will come as well, depending on where it is. And so we do programs we have, actually on the back of the schedule there, I think that it lists some dates across the year, so.
We did go to a one-day seminar that Lori did in Nanaimo
Oh, yeah,
a year ago, maybe.
yeah, there'll be one in June as well in Nanaimo. But that consult piece, I think, is
Yeah.
a good one for connecting.
Thanks.
I'd just like to add something. So we have a fairly good gym on the island. Could you got a program designed that she could have the people who run the gym help her with like exercise that would be specific for her needs?
Absolutely. So with that consultation, with myself or with Emily, that's something we would discuss. Like when we talk about program development, we talk about, where you might be doing that. For some people it's coming into InspireHealth, other people it's at home, other people it's at a gym. So, and we're happy to liaise with someone there to chat through a few of the pieces and then go through that program with you as well.
Thank you.
So what's the first step then to coming in and getting set up for consultation and participating in these workshops?
Yeah, so I do have some registration forms here today, and I can leave them so you can fill it out and you can bring it in with you, or you can email it, or if you want to fill it out and I'll take it with me. But that's the first step, is getting you into our system. In order to do that, we need the form to be filled out pretty fully. It's only a 1 page, it's sort of your demographic information, but we do need your care card number, your date of birth, and your diagnosis in order to get you into the system. That's kind of the minimum. And then from there, once we have you in the system, you can give us a call to schedule an appointment. Typically that first step would be our information session, but as I mentioned, I've really covered everything here that we would cover in that information session, so it might be a little redundant for you to come to one of those. You're welcome to, of course, if you want, but so giving us a call to say that you want to register or book a consultation with whomever, and Jordan can help you out with that. Yeah. Yeah, so I'll maybe leave the forms here and then you can take them and fill them out.
Is it online? Is the form
The
online?
form, you can register online as well, yeah. So going onto our website, I believe there's, I always try to picture it in my head, but there's a place that says register. So you can go on and you'll pick the Victoria site and then your registration will come straight to us. We usually give you a call within a week or so just to check in and let you know about next steps. So you can say that you met me here, and then it speeds the process a little bit.
Great.
Yes, Warren.
Rachel, of course, you know what we're all about. And we have this cancer for life, but it doesn't go away. And so we've got our friends here for the long haul. And so, you know, if you get involved with us, of course, you're going to have to know us for a long time, too. But anyway, aside from that bit of humor, but I'm wondering, is there something beyond what you said today for chronic? Because we chronically have this issue. We have ups and downs with treatment. Some of it's very severe treatment, some of it's not so difficult. But it's always going there, you know, chemicals. We're always running chemicals through our body, various kinds or not. And I wonder if there's anything else that you could say about, because we are, you know, long-term, chronic, and you know, have to, and all the different ways, of course, whether it's social, getting together, supporting each other, and nutrition, all these various things. Is there anything else to really be said about this, or?
I think that one of the unique pieces around that chronic aspect is the individualization of everything. And so it's recognizing that there isn't a cookie cutter prescription for chronic disease or cancer or multiple myeloma, but it's each person, because there are so many ebbs and flows over such a long period of time. And so in terms of our programming, I think one of the greatest pieces of it is that ability to always follow up. And is that ability that there's no expiry date to your participation at InspireHealth. It's for life, really. And so we're here to support those individualized needs throughout that chronic ebb and flow. And sometimes it's navigating something that you navigated 5 years ago, and maybe it's something entirely new. But now you're 5 years older, so there's, you know, always a different sort of piece to it. Not that aging is bad, but it's just our bodies change, right? Yeah. So, yeah, I think that's, you know, the important piece. And I think that idea of every day's a new day is an important piece to remember. And sometimes that means being a little nicer to yourself, you know? I think it's, we're humans and we have high expectations for ourselves, and sometimes letting that go is really important, and not having 100 things that you need to do, or not feeling like I should be feeling this way. It's been X number of weeks since I had this treatment or this happened and I should be here. You are or you aren't, and really we just wake up and we do what we do, and it's about modifying what it is that you're doing so that you can best be supported along that continuum.
For individuals who are supporting, I'm thinking, for instance, Cooking for Health or some of those programs, how would the support person take advantage of this, or would they?
That's a great question. Most of our group programming is available to support people. Support people are, of course, welcome to come to the one-on-one appointments with the person that they're supporting. But then a lot of the group programming is where there are more options for you, where you can attend on your own or you can attend with the person you're supporting. So things like Cooking for Health, really the only exception are the movement-based exercise classes. And that's because the consultation is required first, and that safety piece is so important. So we have to have those consultations first, and we can only do consultations with people with a diagnosis. There are, coming up, I think it's April 23rd, it might be the last thing on the Monday column, is a workshop of self-care for the support person, which we're really looking forward to being able to offer. We've had support groups for support people, but it's been more of a conversation base, where this is a bit more of a workshop style setting. So that's something we're really looking forward to having too.
Okay, I think we should break, but big round of applause. So this supportive care that we've heard about today, quite the contrast to last month, quite a contrast to next month. I don't know if I'll